I'm going to sew a skirt from this pattern, Simplicity 8865, for 11.5-inch dolls. The skirt that I'm sewing is view H, and these are the pieces that you will need. You will need one of piece 20, one of number 22, one of 19, and two of 21. The first thing that I do with my pattern pieces is I cut out the darts to make it easier to transfer the markings to my fabric. To mark the darts on my pattern pieces, I take my pattern pieces, turn them to the wrong side facing up, place my pattern piece over it. As you can see, I've already cut out the darts there. And now I take a pen or marker that is erasable with water or heat, and I just mark the darts. You can also make the line if that's easier for you to trace when you're sewing. So there's the dart that I'm going to sew in, and I'm going to do that to the other back piece as well, and also to my remaining pieces that need darts. In this pattern, you need darts on 4 of the pattern pieces. And there we go. Darts are marked. Now to sew them in. Before sewing in my darts, I like to press the fabric where the dart is so that you can easily put that under your presser foot, and when the needle goes down, you have a nice guide to show you where your dart ends. And always remember, you begin from the top, not at the end of the dart. So I'll put my presser foot and my needle down right over the markings that I made. Needle down. That's my machine warming up, and now it's ready to go. So I can see my marking is right here for the end of the dart, and that's where I'm going to sew to. And you can also see I've got it angled. I've got it angled to reach that point, because when you're sewing a dart, you're sewing kind of like a little triangle, right? See, when you look at the markings, the end of it is here. It's like a little tiny triangle. That's what a dart is in your fabric. So you can shape around the curves of your body or a doll's body. Now I'll do the other side. This is pattern piece 19. It's got, here, let me show you what this one is. This is this one. Pattern piece 19, and there's 2 darts in there because that's the front, so you have 2 front darts. So again, carefully place the needle where your markings are. Needle down and sew to that end. And do that for all your other pattern pieces that require darts. So now that we've completed all of our darts in our fabric, I went ahead and serged my edges. If you have a serger, you can go ahead and finish up your edges. I didn't do the waistband edge because we're going to fold over the facing, and you'll see what I'm talking about when we get to that point. But I did serge the hem. So if you have a serger, go ahead and take care of that now, your side seams and your hems. If not, you can zigzag as we go through the pieces. So the next piece that we're going to work on is piece number 20. This is the part that lays in front of the front piece of the pattern, number 19. So it's going to lay like this. Your fabric is going to lay right on top of the other. And this part is going to be hemmed up. That's why you've got that little notch there. So if you look at the pattern piece, it says 1/2 inch hem allowed and 1/2 inch hem allowed at the bottom as well. Let's work on that. So now we've hemmed up our front layover piece. We've got the hem, 1/2 inch hem allowance here and 1/2 inch hem allowance on the side. So what you will do next is simply sew down this side seam. I'm going to move over my needle just a little bit so it's closer to the edge of where my serging is. All right. So now we've got the layover piece over the front part of the pattern. I'm going to baste this part down to make it easier to sew in when we sew the waistline. So I'm gonna put my needle to a long stitch. Needle down. You only need a few stitches to hold that in place, and we'll remove that later. So just trim my threads there. It's still sitting pretty nice and flat. I did press down my darts to the inside of the center. So the next step will be to sew the 2 back pieces to the 2 side seams of the front. And we'll go ahead and put that together and pin. Now, just to be certain, here's my serged piece, right? So here's the dart that I sewed in. This is the outer back piece. See, this is shorter here than it is here. That's because you're going to fold this over when you're ready to finish up the skirt, and you will place your snap or your Velcro there. So this is the side seam that has a slight curve on it that you want to put here. So right sides together, side seams match, and we're going to pin that in place. Now we're going to do the same to the other side. So again, okay, this is the top, and this is the side seam that you want to put right side together with your skirt. This notched end is your back center piece. So let's pin that, and then we'll be ready to sew it down. Now, if we look at this pattern piece again, you'll see that there's this dotted line is your seam allowance. So let's measure that. That's 1/4 inch. So we're going to sew here 1/4 inch. And 1/4 inch is right there. So it's going to be right above my serge line. So let's go ahead and sew that. Now, for me, I move my needle over 2 points from the edge of my presser foot. I know that that is 1/4 inch. See if I can line it up right there. So just make sure that you have your machine set up to where you can just sew 1/4 inch. If you can't move your needle, then you can reposition your fabric so that the needle and the seam are at 1/4 inch. For most small clothes, the norm is 1/4 inch seam allowance. I don't sew over my pins, so I take them out as I sew along. And then what we'll do is we will press open our seams and press them open. But first, I'm going to sew this side down. So I'll take it to the iron and press open my seams and then trim up these threads. All right, I've pressed my seams open and I've pressed up my hem as well. So now I'm going to go ahead and stitch my hem across, being careful to not stitch down this part. So you can pin it back like this, so it doesn't get in your way while you sew down your hem. Just be careful when you're sewing with this little piece here. And now this one I'm going to sew up as a 1/4 inch as well. Just making sure that my seams are still open before I sew it. So I want to reduce the fabric layers, and that's why I press them open. Okay, I'm going to skip that piece there because there's a little piece of that layover. And there we go. Now your skirt is hemmed and we're ready to move on to the next step. When you're doing the hem, don't forget to bring your stitch length back down to your normal 2.5 or 3 length, because I forgot that it was still basted from when we basted this. So I have to remove the extra stitching there. So now we're going to put the facing in, and this is a tricky piece. I'll show you why in just a second. I've already serged my facing. Now you see how it has this curve? We're gonna clip these curves. So first, you're going to match up right sides together, this end, pin that, and go to the other end of your skirt and pin this. Now I'm using 100% cotton, which doesn't have any stretch. So what I have to do to make this fit is clip the curves. So when you're clipping these curves, you're just gonna go in. It's really handy to have a small pair of scissors for things like this. And just lightly, no more than 1/4 inch, less if you can. Just put in some clips there. That's going to let you spread the fabric out like that. So you can I can do them a little bit deeper than that. It'll give me more of a stretch. Clip the other side. And I'm going to clip the middle here too. So now that we've clipped the curves, and we might need to clip a little bit more, but what we're gonna do is go ahead and pin that down. And when you have something like this, just use lots of pins. It really helps. Clipping those curves and lots of pins really helps when you have non-stretch fabric. And when you think it's not going to fit, or it's too small, just clip those curves. And make sure it matches up. I have to clip some more. So I'm going to clip from here. So there I have everything pinned. I put in lots of clips and lots of pins. So I'm going to keep the same quarter inch seam allowance. Sorry for shaking the camera. And sew slowly across that while I remove my pins. And maybe backstitch at the end here. And you're going to sew right below where your clips end. So you make sure you catch your facing to your waist, to the skirt, the waist part of the skirt. And now I'm going to backstitch. Okay, take that out. And here's what that looks like. So you're going to press this up. The next step will be to press this up, both the seam allowance and the facing. You're going to press it up, and then we'll go in and trim this, and then we're going to fold it over like so. So it's going to look something like that. I'm going to go press this up. All right, so I'm going to position my fabric so that the needle is going to be close to the waistband edge that we folded over. Just take your time when you're doing little pieces like this, because it can sometimes slip from under your presser foot. Since there's not a lot of fabric on this end to hold it together. Okay. Or I probably could have increased my pressure, the pressure of my presser foot as well. All right. So cut off those ends. And there we go. So now we're going to fold it to the inside, right sides together. And this is my my back piece. See where I have this marked? I've transferred the marking here. So what you're going to do is you're going to sew across and pivot down. So what I would do is I would back stitch here, sew to here, pivot, and back stitch at the bottom. I just made sure that my needle is back in the middle position. And I line up the little mark in the center of my presser foot, which is where my needle is positioned now. Sew forward, back stitch by sewing using my reverse button. I sew right to the marking, leave my needle down. Oh wait, I can put one more stitch in. All right, leave my needle down, pivot, and now I sew straight down. And I'm gonna back stitch at the end. Okay. Trim those threads. And flip it inside out. This is going to fold over and trim that. And here's the skirt. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a sew-in snap, and I'm going to sew it by hand right here. And I'm going to give this a nice little press and come back and show you how it fits on the doll. So here's the final result of the skirt after it's been pressed and cleaned up from all the loose little threads. It's got the sew-on snap. And since this is the second one I've made, I'll show you the one I previously made and put on the doll, and it fits her pretty nice. And that's it. That's how you make this Barbie skirt. Thanks for watching.